Hey everyone, this is Hoot, host and producer of the Sports Deli podcast. If you're watching this and have not seen the first part of the podcast that talks about Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, I encourage you to do so. If you're hearing this in the first podcast at the tail end, then I appreciate you sticking around and listening to my follow up comments on Paper Route the day after I did the original podcast. So I'm going to play a couple of quotes for you from Angel, and then I'm going to give you my opinion about it. And again, thanks for listening. And any feedback that you have, again, just send me an email to thesportsdeli@gmail.com or DM me on Instagram at MikeHooter.
Let's be clear here. What is the message? What do you want people to walk away from with?
Be who you are. Stand on your ground. Don't care what anybody says. I don't care what anybody has to say about me. I'm always going to be who I am. And like I said, unapologetically Angel. That's just who I am. And never feel like you're too much for somebody, or you're too loud, or you're too ghetto. Be who you are. And I think that has got me to where I am. I don't think that, I mean, the negative people are going to say what they have to say, and that's on them. But I know I've impacted a lot of people, and a lot of little girls look up to me and say, I want to be Angel Reese. I want to do the things that she does one day. Why are we going back and forth as women? If we're supposed to be growing the game together, why can't we be together? I feel like we've went into a space where it's black women against white women.
Yes.
And that's the negative part of it.
So you just heard those two quotes from Angel Reese, and that was from her time on Paper Route, presented by I Am Athlete. And so there's two different things going on again. I just want to make sure that I follow up to my original comments. When she says what she just said, it's interesting because it's the day after. And when you have time to reflect on your behavior and you see what happens with social media and you go into these interviews, the feeling that I got, and I don't know her, I've invited her onto the show, I don't know what's in her heart, but I know there are two different narratives, as I've said. And big picture wise, it's unacceptable. But when I hear comments like that, when she says that it shouldn't be about black versus white and that type of thing, it makes me think that she reflected back on what happened at the end of the game. And maybe if she had to do it all over again, she wouldn't have necessarily done it to that extent. And again, that's just the feeling I got. And I said this in a response to somebody on social media. I wouldn't have cared if it was Tom Brady. I wouldn't have cared if it was Caitlin Clark. I was irritated by it because I thought the timing was off. And so when I again hear comments like this from her, it makes me think that she reflected back and I don't know, maybe she was somewhat embarrassed. Maybe she wished she would have approached it with a little bit more class. Maybe she wished she would have just showed the hand and waved her hand in front of her face, saying you can't see me just to the crowd, instead of what looked like just like a really, I don't know, like it was all coming out at once in that moment. Just it spilled over kind of thing. That's the way that I felt about it. And I'm just specifically again talking about that moment. You had just won a national championship. And I think she's reflected back on that and maybe wish she would have talked about what she talked about in terms of big picture, because I think that's the overwhelming, most important part of all of this, but also had a level of humility and class at the end of the game. And that's all I'm talking about, which has nothing to do with race, color, gender, none of that. It'd be the same thing. I would say the exact same thing if Tom Brady, after the last 53 seconds of winning a Super Bowl, he's taking a knee and then he slashes his throat to the other team because they did that the year before in the playoff game when they beat Tom Brady. Or if Tom Brady walked by the sidelines if they were playing New England in the Super Bowl and he showed his hand with the rings in front of Bill Belichick, where he already won 6 rings with him, but now he's with Tampa Bay and he's winning a ring with them and he's showing his hand as if to say, whatever, I'm here now. I'm winning a ring over here. No, that wouldn't be acceptable either. It would flat out piss me off. And so, anyways, I just want to follow up on that. I think Angel Reese, what she said the next day, not only about the White House, which I know Jill Biden backtracked, but next time maybe her and her husband, Mr. President, should consult with President Obama and Michelle on matters of national sports because that was just ridiculous in and of itself. So, shout out to Caitlin Clark. Shout out to Angel Reese. I got something coming in the mail soon regarding both of them, and I'm so excited about those two things. And I will reveal those things once I get them. I appreciate the thoughtful conversations. I appreciate the pushback because the conversation needs to continue. And even if you disagree with me, it's important that we keep the conversation going. That's the most important thing. And I remember having a conversation with a former NBA coach who actually was one of the people that pushed back on social media. And I won't name who that is. I've invited her to the show, uh, and she's just very busy. But I remember having a conversation with her a couple of years ago, and she told me that she's so tired. And that's the thing that I thought about yesterday was even though she was pushing back, and I don't know if she quite understood where I was coming from because she didn't like my pushback against Angel, and I tried to clarify things. But I can't imagine being a person of color, not only from the moment you walk out of your house, but being a woman of color walking out of your house. And what it's like to always look over your shoulder, have heard the stories about your parents and your grandparents, about what it was like. Have your heart rate go up when a police officer passes by you when you're driving or when you're walking. Looking over your shoulder when you're going into a store. I just can't imagine it. And this coach told me in a DM at the time that she's tired. And I literally started crying. This was in a DM. And it just sort of hit me in that moment how exhausting it must be not only to be a woman, a black woman in a men's coaching space, but just being a black woman in America. I just can't possibly fathom what it's been like, not only generationally. I mean, can you imagine what it was like for women of color and men of color? I just can't. So, big picture wise, I get it. And again, I was just talking about the end of the game, and I wish she would have handled things a little differently. I love her for who she is. She's an amazing woman. She's brilliant. She's beautiful. She's going to be highly successful in whatever she does. I just didn't like that it appeared that that moment was bigger than the team and sports and women's sports in particular. And like she said, there's strength in numbers, and that women should be amplifying other women, no matter who it is. And as I've said many times before, all you got to do is look at the WNBA. They changed two elections in 2020, and they forced an owner out with the Atlanta Dream because of her views. And that's what the power of social media can do, and that's what the power of women coming together can do. Until next time, much love. Bet on women. Peace.